they'll be relevant. I don't think that they'll be relevant in the sense that, you know, League of Legends is relevant or whatever. Um, because they just don't have that kind of player to player interaction. They just don't. Um, but I think that there's a lot of potential for them to be much bigger than they are. I think that I've said this before. I think that people really they relate to shooting games on a very primal level. Like it's probably the simplest game genre to pick up right away and understand immediately what you're supposed to do. But at the same time, it's probably one of the hardest genres to understand how to actually do it. And I think that that is a hurdle which we've seen arcade shooting games struggle with forever, basically, and something which I mean, they still do struggle with. And so that's kind of, it's different with fighting games. Like, fighting games have this incredible difficulty curve, but they have such a rich history and such a devoted player base already. Um, Whereas shooting games, they have the same kind of rich history and devoted player base, but it's so much smaller now. It's so much more niche because it doesn't have that person-to-person interaction. So it doesn't have that motivation for people to try to get good at it, despite that skill wall. I think that, like, oh yeah, what's a good example? Like, if you look at something like 2DX, it's a game that is impossibly simple on a conceptual level, or DDR. They're impossibly simple on a conceptual level. You have notes, on the screen, and they go to a line, and when they get to a line, you push a button, and then you succeed, basically. Um, like, the issue with those games is that the skill base is so easy to understand. You can immediately see what is going on there, and you can immediately see how you're supposed to improve, and the struggle then becomes, okay, I just need to practice until I get good enough to play the harder songs. The issue with shooting games is, like, you start playing a game, and how you actually even dodge correctly, like how tap dodging as opposed to just sweeping the screen, that is something that a lot of people don't know to do and don't understand to do, even once they've kind of seen someone else play. Um, there is not that immediate sense of, okay, these are all of the basic skills that I need to play this game, now I just need to improve. It doesn't work like that in shooting games. It's really, the concept is very obvious, but the execution is very, very kind of fouled in, it's never explained. And when it is explained, it's explained by something like a tutorial, which nobody ever fucking wants to watch. I mean, literally, I don't think anyone likes tutorials. Even people who have never played incredibly complicated games before will never watch a tutorial, because nobody wants to feel like they need someone to tell them what to do. Um, it's the same reason that games don't have manuals anymore, which actually really depresses me, because I like collecting like game manuals and I like looking at them. And I would always read a manual before I played a new game and be like, wow, this is the experience that I'm about to have. Like, I wonder what it would be like. But I know I'm in the minority in that. I mean, most people never looked at that shit. Um, so it's kind of a strange situation where we have like this incredibly simplistic genre, but it has so much going on behind the scenes, and there's so much complexity to how you actually go about playing it that people just don't understand. And if there is a way, to explain that to somebody, like if you make a shmup that in some sense tells someone how to play a game as they're playing the game, you have succeeded. The best example I can think of, here, I'll actually put this in the chat. Hang on, I'm gonna. Regardless of what you might think of him as a YouTuber, as a person, I think that Egoraptor's Sequelitis episode on Mega Man X talks about this exact concept. Like, he discusses how the introduction to the game teaches you how to play the game. Like, it's like, oh, you're walking forward, okay, and then an enemy comes in and you learn to shoot it, okay, and then there's like a platform that's slightly higher and you can't just walk forward, you have to jump, and then you learn how to jump, and it's like, okay, like all of these things come in a way that is very comprehensible here. Even the stuff that's not immediately like first glance, like wall jumping and kind of more complicated actions. The game has a way to explain them with how the levels are designed. If you can do that with a shooting game, you will tap into that primal understanding that everyone has of this genre. I mean, everyone fucking knows what a shooting game is. Even if you're like, oh, I play arcade shooting games, I'm like, oh, what's that? If you start saying any names, Galaga, Raiden, 1942, Strikers, 1945, like even more recent stuff like Ikaruga, Donpachi, Radiant Silvergun, people will be like, oh, those games, yeah, I know what those are. People, they all connect with it. They can all understand it, and people love watching this shit. I mean, every time I go to conventions and stuff, there are people who just stop by and watch. And then I'm like, do you want to play? No, thanks. I'm terrible at these games. And, or I'm too afraid to play. It looks too hard. They are not... They like watching the game. They understand the game. They understand the concept, but they do not understand how to play it. And that is, I think, the crucial problem with shooting games and why they are in the position they are right now. I don't even think it's because of console games and other stuff coming out that people get into more. I mean, I think that's part of it, but I think that is the big disconnect. Is in an arcade environment, it is okay to have that kind of design. In fact, it's good to have that kind of design because it gets the designer more money. But in a home environment, you do not want a game that does not give you any help on how to play the game. And I think if someone can break through that barrier, you have made something, and then it gets exposure, and then it gets that perfect storm of, media people interested, and enough casual people playing it, and enough people who stream, really, really, really mass, like, audience people, like fucking PewDiePie, who, as much as I believe that he represents pretty much everything that's wrong with YouTube and gamer culture today, I think there's a lot to be said for how much market pull and influence he has. But anyway, like, if you get that perfect storm of that game which explains itself, and people who want to play it, and people who want to make other people play it, then you have that sudden massive explosion of interest again. I think that it's entirely possible. I just think that it's hilariously unlikely with this genre because nobody's developing them anymore. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways to do it. It's like Blackbird is saying, color coding bullets depending on how they're aiming at you. Holy shit, that would explain so much. Like if I could be playing a game and telling someone, oh yeah, like all the red bullets are aimed directly at me. So to avoid all the red bullets, all I have to do is move a little bit to the side each time. As long as I'm not where I was when they were fired, I'm fine. And then they'd be like, oh, okay, what do the blue bullets do? Oh, those are always the same configuration. Like, I don't necessarily think that that's something which should be implemented for players who are already good, because it might frustrate them. But at the same time, it's like, this is an idea which is so incredibly simple, and yet it does so much. Just doing that does so much. So anyway, I gotta fucking change the console cables around. So just give me a second to do that. But I think I've done a good job of articulating that. Like, but that kind of issue, I think, is a big part of the problem. And I do think that people, on a very fundamental level, they understand these games, and they understand the objective of these games. And everyone has played a shooting game. Everyone has played a fighting game. I mean, that's maybe less true in the area of mobile games, but where, I mean, everyone's now played Angry Birds, but there are people who identify as gamers after playing Angry Birds who have never played any other games. But they'll play that for like 13 hours or some shit. Like 20 hours a week, which is like, okay, that is actual, like, real dedication, but you only know that. But I mean, like, everyone knows shooting games. Everyone knows fighting games. If you start talking to someone about them, everyone has a story about them. They've all played it in an arcade when they're growing up, or they've all seen someone else play it, or they've all seen the hardest video game boss ever videos on YouTube. Yeah. Yeah. And I think my goal with STG Weekly Live is to get exposure for this genre, to prove to the people who are willing to invest in learning a game that it still exists and is still relevant. And that's why we're doing stuff like going to anime conventions and going to fighting game tournaments. I mean, that's where you find that audience who doesn't care if the game takes a while to learn, because they're so interested, they're so dedicated to their hobby, the hobby that they currently have, that they're fine with spending those hours. They're fine with, watching those replays. They don't mind that it's not a game that you can pick up and instantly expect to do well at. But I think that that's only the first step. I think we not only need to be getting them more exposure, but we need to be doing more to make them accessible. And I have ideas about how to do that. I do. And I think it's probably hopelessly idealistic to think that I can make any kind of difference. But, we've already had people say, like, oh, yeah, I saw you guys at Anime Expo, and I loved your presentation, and I started playing these games again because of you, just because of that. Like, I think it is making a difference. It's making a very small difference right now. But I think that there is potential to do something. And I don't know what it is. I don't know how big of an impact it'll have, but that's why I do this. That's why I will spend 24 hours without sleeping for a charity drive. That's why I will go and run streaming setups at TogoCon and work the equivalent of like 50 hours in 2 days over the course of a weekend. This is I really truly believe that we can do something here. And like I said, maybe it's hopefully idealistic, but hopelessly idealistic. But I do think that that people are listening, and we just have to speak loudly enough that they can hear. Anyway, I'm gonna change cables around. Blackbird, totally, you hit the nail right on the head there. If fucking Goat Simulator can become mimetically popular, there is no reason why shooting games can't. It's just that perfect storm. And there's some good analysis of why that game got popular, actually. And a lot of it has to do with, like I was saying, shit like PewDiePie, like these early adopters who play games and then promote them well enough that other people want to play them too. And unfortunately, that's an audience which we probably won't be able to tap into unless we put the word out, unless we manage to get some really compelling new release. And so again, that's kind of what it all comes back to. Come on. So those cables plugged in. Ah. Oh, whoops. Whoopsie, whoopsie. Yeah. Toes and everything. Kigar, yeah, there you go. Like, oh man. See, like I love seeing stuff like that. Like that's like a really perfect way of breaking it down. And I think that short, high intensity gameplay is something which is really starting to grab people's attention. I mean, if you look at kind of recent trends, there's a lot of people, not just in our community, not just in kind of the quote unquote hardcore gamer community, but outside of that as well, who are starting to acknowledge that stuff like Call of Duty and Halo, it's kind of stale and repetitive and always the same, and it's this kind of long build up, slow payoff kind of thing, like you see with RPGs. And sometimes that can be wonderful, but sometimes you want to have fun for 5 minutes, and you only have 5 minutes, and you need something you can jump into and jump out of, which is why mobile games are so successful, which is why shit like Angry Birds is so successful. I mean, if we can, if you can make a shooting game which gets enough word out, like a mobile shooting game that gets enough word out that plays, in that way, in that short, addictive, like 5 minutes of awesomeness, and then I can go do anything else in my life. Again, that is success. So, yeah, I mean, Zangeku, you totally have a point. There's a lot of interest in hardcore games like Super Meat Boy and whatnot, which are hard games. I mean, definitely, but it's so like it's so incremental, and it's so short duration. But I think that just having that introduction to the concept is already driving a lot of people to, speedrunning is becoming a lot more popular. Like, speedrunning is a great example of this kind of stuff where you need to know a game really, really well, and you need to be able to execute consistently over sometimes a very long period of time. And it's becoming more popular, both to watch and to do. And that's something which I think kind of bodes well for the kind of gameplay that Shmups endorse. Or shooting games endorse, because I fucking hate the term shmup, and I even use it myself now, and it's just like, oh god. Oh god, Osu, please don't talk to me about Osu. I mean, yes, it's good that it's been getting popular and that it has such a ridiculous fan base, but as a game, there is maybe I'm in the minority, but as someone who plays other rhythm games like Beatmania, I really do not like Osu, because I've yet to play charts which really feel like they're on sync in a way that works. And because it's all fan-created content, I'm sure there's a lot of really good ones, but there's also a lot of like really random stuff. And just the general gameplay mechanic, I don't know. I mean, it's not bad. it's not a bad idea. It's just I feel like the execution is not quite there. Um, no, I have not noticed anyone's moved on to 2DX or SDVX. Mostly because certain people are not allowed to stream 2DX or SDVX right now. But yeah, I would actually love to stream 2DX, but there are reasons why I can't, and that's all I'm gonna say. Anyway, I'm about to have the Xbox set up. You just heard it turn on, so let's start going with that. Sorry for the very long transition there. I didn't expect to get into this whole semantics discussion. Yeah, I mean, I think that the group that is interested in that kind of game, in skill-based gaming, they like shmups, they like fighting games, they like rhythm games. I mean, that's like what I'm playing right now. It's like, let's see, there was like a solid week where all I was doing was playing fighting games, and right now I finally got my 2DX setup working again. After like 6 months, and so I've just been going crazy hard with that, like playing 4-hour marathon sessions, and I'm seeing a lot of improvement with that. But it's something that I've really struggled to have free time lately. I'm so incredibly busy with schoolwork. It's just like, but yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of overlap both in the players and in kind of the conceptual reasons behind why you want to play. Why you want to play the games, like you get into skill-based games because they reward you for being skillful, and from there you are interested in other skill-based games for the same reason, and so you move on to other ones, or you start branching out. Kagar, do not even get me started. There needs to be another console beat mania. I just think Konami has a stick up their ass about it. Like, they just don't understand that people like these games. They just don't get it. It's like, look around. Oh my god. It would be... Controllers are another thing, but I mean, if you look at how much people are willing to pay for a limited edition or deluxe game right now, you could totally do that. Make a new Konami style controller, release it as a bundle for like $200, $250 as like a super limited edition of the game. Be like, yeah, this is Beatmania 2DX 22 console edition, special edition with an arcade style controller, and suddenly, bam! People are like, holy shit, what's this new thing? It's awesome. It's got 7 buttons. It's got a turntable. It's got this high-ish quality controller that comes with it. Like, oh man, limited edition stuff is awesome. This game is awesome. Like, people go apeshit for that. People will pay $300 for limited edition games now, and there's definitely a market for that kind of thing. And it's just a total coincidence that Konami gave up on the console releases just a couple years before there was suddenly this giant market for limited edition games. Yeah, so... Kagar, I have 3 Beatmania controllers, including one proper DJ DAO and 2 arcade-style controllers, and it's like... not arcade-style, but KOCs. But yeah, exactly. Extra peripherals make games more popular. Extra stuff makes games more popular. I don't understand why more console people do not get that. And that's another thing. Is like you rarely see arcade sticks bundled with games, which I find really strange. I think that... I mean, yes, I've seen some fighting games bundled with sticks and whatnot, but usually they're really crappy sticks. But it's still that idea that, people like dedicated stuff. They like to have nice things. And if you give them the choice between the not quite as nice thing and the nicer thing. They will usually go for the nicer thing, provided that it's still reasonably affordable. Which I find really interesting, actually. Come on. I gotta get my... Speaking of sticks, I'm trying to get my... There we go. Yeah, that custom Crimson Clover arcade stick. I do think that some of the other thing with... exactly, though. Mad Catz, they start releasing arcade sticks, but they get the go-ahead from Capcom to release Street Fighter branded arcade sticks. So you got Street Fighter the game and Street Fighter the arcade stick, and there's that immediate connection. This is how I'm supposed to play the game. I gotta get one of those sticks. And then people understand that it's a good thing. Like, I mean, I just feel like the genres that I like do not see these things happening. They do not understand that there is an audience here that wants these things and that will pay money for them. And maybe there's some perfectly legitimate reason why they don't do it. Like maybe Konami's, Beatmania division is completely focused on their arcade games because they only have a group of like 10 people who are working on SDVX, Beatmania, like all the other rhythm games, the names of which I can't remember, like Poppin' and all the other shit. Like maybe that's the only group of people that they have working on like 8 different games, and Jubeat and whatever the new one is now. Like maybe they have like a really small team for that, and they're like, oh no, we can't afford anyone to go and do all this other stuff. But then at the same time, I see stuff like Konami's Metal Gear division is absolutely enormous. So I don't know. Yeah. Oh, the fighting game developers are definitely in that position. Like they, oh man. And you see that manifested in how they release the games even for console. Like, you see stuff like Street Fighter, and Street Fighter 4, and Ultra Street Fighter 4, and Super Street Fighter 4 are like 3 completely different console releases. Why? Why not just patch it? Why not just make it downloadable content for like $10? This is not a complicated thing, and yet for the arcade, you could not do that. Or you can't do that, or at least you couldn't do it until very recently with the advent of stuff like... I don't even know what systems the fighting games use, but there's like Nessica Live. There's the weird God, what I don't even remember all the names, but anyway, you could not do things like that for arcade games up until very recently. So you see the re-release of game after game after game in a slightly different coding, and basically like a patch that's released as a separate game. And it's like, no, you don't do that. That pisses off the customer base. And that pissed off the operator base before, but they just had to suck it up and deal with it. But it pisses off the customer base now for the console releases. Shit like BlazBlue. Like, BlazBlue Continuum Shift came out, and then BlazBlue Continuum Shift 2 came out, and then BlazBlue Continuum Shift Extend came out. Those are 3 separate console releases, and 3 separate arcade releases, but why not just make the other shit downloadable content for the previous releases? It makes no sense. Anyway. It's like there's a really big issue with a lot of arcade-based games in trying to penetrate the mass market, and it's for reasons just like this. And one of the reasons that I think fighting games came back in a big way is that they released a stick at the same time. It created that sense of, this is the game, this is the tool that I am supposed to use to play the game. And when people started playing on that, they realized how cool sticks were, and they realized how much they'd been missing out with American-style arcade cabinets for years and years and years, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you have entire forums just about arcade sticks, but it helps to get people interested. And I think that the release of arcade sticks was one of the things that eventually led to more popular fighting game tournaments, and eventually led to more popular everything. And now fighting games are huge. They're giant esports. I mean, they're not as big as fucking Dota 2, but that's probably not something they'll ever be able to reach. I mean, that's just a level that you basically need an entire nation playing a game in order to get behind it in the way that Dota and League of Legends and StarCraft have it. I mean, the reason that those are so popular as esports is because so many people play them, not here, but in Korea. Because a lot of people play it here, but not enough people play it here for them to, for the prize pool to be $10 million. It's just not the case. Anyway, rant over. I'm putting Futari in right now, and then we will move on. Fucking autistic as shit. Well, okay, that's definitely one way of looking at it. Blackbird, I'm not sure what to think of them because I've never actually played them. I think that if I ever did play one, it would go one of two ways. Either I would find it completely and totally uninteresting, or I would absolutely fall in love with it and just become totally obsessed with it like I did StarCraft. And as a result of that being the two options, I'm never going to play them. Because either way, it can't end well. Yeah, my friends are all like, ugh. My friends are all like, oh, Toby, you should totally play League of Legends, you'd love it. And I'm like, I know. That's why I won't play it. Okay. Kagar. Like, that would be hilarious if that were true. Actually, like, oh my god. Should I start bitching about games journalists? Because that's another thing that I would love to talk about. I would actually love to talk to a games journalist about games journalism. Which reminds me, I did get an email from one of the guys who participated in the SDG Weekly short order, who said he was actually the games journalist, and I'm like, interesting. Perhaps we can use this one day. Interesting. Anyways, though, it's Who are you calling Trap? This is Softdrink. Do you think I'm Trap? Have I become so similar? Am I become Trap 15? Yeah, it's I should speedrun Shmups. I should join SCA and just be like, yeah, I'm just gonna speedrun this game. I'm gonna beat it in 25 minutes. Yep. And actually, I think that's interesting. One of the things I like most about Hangeki, and found so interesting about our discussion with the game's creators, was that actually is their idea. Is kind of shmup speedruns, but boom.